Welcome to episode 11 of my narrative inquiry. What does it mean to be Acadian with Frances Gendreau from the St. John Valley? Frances brings the unique perspective of Acadians living and working in the Madawaska region. This region shares a border between New Brunswick and Maine, making it a unique place to live and work.
Just going to start recording. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So I'm ready for you to start what it means to be Acadian for you.
Okay. Um, do you want me to click on got it here so that disappears, or I've got a message in front of me?
Yeah,
Does
sure.
okay. Okay. So we're recording. Well, for me, um, being Acadian is it's just for me it's natural because of my upbringing. I grew up that way. Um, there was never, okay, you're being Acadian now and you're not now. Okay. So it was just be yourself. You're a little kid, and this is what it is, and this is what we do. And both my parents and then grandparents before then carry the typical Acadian family names. So growing up that way, my mom was a great cook, and she held to um, 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 keeping Acadian foods. Not in every day, and it wasn't mandatory, but it was like she made the ploys regularly, especially with the Saturday night beans. Um, and there's another uh, recipe uh, that would be more like they're called croquignoles. And so you'll see why I'm getting to that in a minute there. And then she also made every year the high bush cranberry jelly, okay, because it comes into season and whatever. So along the years, what it means to be Acadian on that level, okay, on the food level, and I'm skipping some because there were the pot en pot is another one, which is a meat dish. In Quebec, it's called the cipat. And that was a great, like, Christmas, New Year, because it makes a huge amount. So if you had a lot of people gathering after la messe de minuit, so after midnight mass. So those are traditional things. So the heritage that we inherited from the early settlers right here in the St. John Valley were continued in our traditions. So, what it means to be Acadian, and now at my ripe age, I'm noticing that that has not been upkept everywhere. So, I'm about the only one who does the high bush cranberry um, jelly in late August, beginning of September, and it's in jars and it lasts all year. Um, we do have an Acadian festival every year in the town of Madawaska. So I've been tapped in to do demonstrations of these foods. And so, in hopes of keeping some of these traditions alive, or at least known of. So, what does it mean to be Acadian? To me, it's very natural, but it's also about heritage and about preserving traditions. Now, the language part, I am very strong to try and preserve the French, because now with the educational system's insistence, and they insisted with a reason, I suppose, because it was to send us to English speaking universities where I might not have otherwise gotten an education the way I did. So, I needed the English language to get into university. But so now we find ourselves here in the St. John Valley with a situation where the grandparent often speaks only French, but the next generation did not propagate the French. So now this generation, my generation, oftentimes has grandchildren who speak only English. And there's a great divide there because one cannot, there's always, ways to communicate, but it's not like we're doing here. So today, what that means being Acadian, that's a little bit what it is. It's about keeping some traditions alive, preserving the language and the heritage. It's the folks that came before us, the ancestors, trying to preserve that.
So being the torchbearer for the culture and carrying it on.
Yes.
Yeah. So would you say that what you feel, your feelings on what it means to be an Acadian today, is that different than what it would have been when you were a child?
Well, when I was a child, I didn't realize I was just being a kid. And nobody said you have to be Acadian. It was just the natural thing. It was just like, you drink your milk type thing. It was just, this is what we do. So I can say that while going to school, and I had my deal of punishments for speaking French and then going off to an English university. Well, when I came back, then and then got a job in a French speaking school, which made me very thankful. Well, it made me, how is it now different than what it was? It's the appreciation. So one gets to appreciate what was there that we took for granted when I was a kid. But then having gone through the waves of growing up and whatnot, you get to appreciate. Or I know some people who said, the heck with this, and they renounced the whole thing. But for me, that's not, I'm going the other way and I'm saying, hey, wait a minute here.
Yeah, so it's true. You could go either way. You could renounce the whole thing, or you could embrace it. And you chose to embrace it, which is going to lead to another question, I think. But for those that chose to renounce everything, that leads me to my next question, which is, do you think English Acadians are less Acadian due to assimilation? And if so, why?
Well, like I said, I'm coming from the heritage point.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make them less Acadian? I don't think so, because, okay, the language part, but I mean their heritage, their ancestors are the same. That's not something you can take away. So then we'd have to go into the definition of what it means being Acadian. Is it your family name? Is it your, did you move away? Some of our, I'll put cousins, are in the Louisiana area. their dialect over the years has become different necessarily like ours have. We have here I think a reasonably large influence from Quebec. So some of our terms in French have taken on a little bit of a Quebec aspect to it, where in Louisiana they've got the Creole and the whatever, and that makes their language a little bit different.
Yeah, it definitely has its own flavor.
Yeah, yeah. So to see if it makes them less Acadian, I don't think so. I see Acadian as a larger umbrella. I hope I'm answering your question
No,
a
you
little bit.
definitely are. And I felt with the way you answered the first question, that's kind of where you were going to be going with this one. Since you feel that it's heritage, then it doesn't matter whether or not someone's assimilated. Their your heritage is where you come from, so that's not going to change.
One thing I have noticed across along the years, you get these people from the St. John Valley, and they go off to college and they go off, doing their thing in life and get married to people what we call, and it's not with disrespect, but we call them from away. They're not from here. And I find that these typically English speaking people with no French background, they're the ones after they're married and they're here in the St. John Valley and they have kids and whatever, they're the ones who are appreciating Acadian heritage the most. It's a nice thing to see.
That is really nice.
So they enjoy the food, they enjoy the people, and they're not afraid to say, whoa, will you say that again? Because I didn't understand what you were saying. Because we're very Franglish. In the same sentence, we're going to go from French to English. That's very typical.
Yeah, there's some places in New Brunswick that are like that as well.
Now, oh yeah. Yeah.
So do you feel that you've had fewer or more opportunities due to being Acadian?
Being Acadian never gave me any privileges that I can zero in on, except that when the school system in Edmundston was looking for a French speaking person, I was the one who showed up. That certainly worked in my favor. If it gave me fewer, I don't think so. It didn't really affect, I don't think, my opportunities to anything. I married a French speaking guy that I knew from high school or even grade school. It's small community. That may help some. I might think that some others may not, but anyway. So I don't know that it affected the opportunities. I think our opportunities here are more limited by economics rather than language or heritage or whatever. It's far, it's distant. We're lucky to have Edmundston there because that's the big city that's closest to us. Other than that, we travel on the Quebec side. And so I think it was advantageous to have that, because now we can deal with French-speaking Quebec people, and if I go to Fredericton, I can very well converse with anybody there. So I think it's more of an opportunity giving situation to
Yeah.
me.
And you for your work, you traveled between the States and Canada for, you said 32 years. So
Yeah, it was about a 45-minute drive one way, 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the weather. So we're not dependent on traffic, we're dependent on the weather.
yeah.
So there's a lot of factors also that are brought in here from that are typical Acadian, from clothing, the warm clothing, from building houses. You'll build your house differently than if you're in a warmer climate. And so those were tricks learned by the Acadians.
Yeah, well, you have to know how to survive here.
It's called survival. Yep. Yeah.
So you don't feel that you had any obstacles due to being Acadian. What about obstacles due to language barriers?
Well, when I went to college, I was living in a dorm, very differently from today, okay? But in a girls' dorm. And there was one telephone, not a cell phone, but one telephone booth at the end of the hall. And so if I called home, we had to wait our turn, to use the phone. But
Yeah.
when it was my turn and I called home, when I was done and walked out of the phone booth, there was a line of girls sitting on the floor who had been listening to me speaking French, and then they would call me frog. There are terms that are attributed to different, um, to what extent do you let that bother you? I never did. I just said, well, when you want to learn French, let me know. I'll show you how. It didn't. Some people might have been bothered by it. I'm not sure, but I wasn't.
You were kind of lucky because being able to speak French on the phone, and the other girls weren't able to eavesdrop on what you're saying either, whereas all of them.
That's true. That's true. My roommate used to tell me that I would talk in my sleep, and she didn't know what I was saying because I was speaking French. It's stuff like that. To me, it's more fun or funny than anything else. It's not there. There's the advantage. Um, well, I'm now teaching my granddaughter on FaceTime. She's in the Boston area, and she wants to do the conversational French with our local dialect. And so I'm able to do that with her. And when I asked her, why do you want to do this? We're in about our 5th year of doing this. She's 15.
Oh,
And
that's nice that she picked it up at 10 and she kept it up.
yeah, I said, why do you want to do this? And she said, well, when you, meaning Mame, grandmother, when you and mom speak, I want to know what you're talking about. So she wants the conversational to be able to listen in like the girls in the dorm were listening in, type thing.
Yeah.
So it's an advantage.
Yeah, it definitely helped you get a job and have a career out of it. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you had to somewhat assimilate to go to university and, carry on there.
Now, if you are we limited on time here?
No.
Okay, so being in school, okay, teaching, I was in Edmundston teaching in a French situation, okay, and I'll share this with you so you'll see the I was teaching a home ec course, a foods course, okay, and it was eighth graders. So that's a special age as well. And so you're in a laboratory and everybody's going miss and madame and madame and madame and they all have their questions, and so it gets a little bit hectic in there. We were cooking something and we needed grated cheese. So in French, c'est du fromage râpé.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to relearn the technical terms in French because I had learned them in English at university. So the girls are going, Madame, Madame, fromage, because they all had their specific jobs. Okay. So at one point I said, okay, girls, okay. I wanted to know who had grated the cheese because we were looking for the grated cheese. So I said, who raped the cheese? Well, eighth grade girls, you can imagine,
Yeah.
they just cried. They cried. And not long ago, I met this lady who was in that class. She was an eighth grader in 1972. So I met her and she said, oh, Madame Gendreau, j'ai jamais oublié who raped the cheese. She never forgot that because that stayed with her. And I thought, that was all the funny story and everything. But she learned something that day of that cross in my mind under pressure of using a French word and an English word. And they just, so they had a lot of fun with it. And I chose to have fun with them. But that stayed with her. So I'm thinking, situations in her life, and who knows how many others. I mean, so
So it's definitely left an impression on her because it's not every day that you remember experiences from grade 8.
yeah. And I remember this teacher who said something like that in front of the whole class, and they had a good time with it. But it led them to appreciate something else also.
Yeah. So I had one last question for you.
Yeah.
And it's what's your biggest challenge as an Acadian?
Right now,
Or in general, what's the biggest challenge that you faced?
uh, growing up, I can't think of a challenge. It was the French language, it was the English being imposed on us. That was a challenge, but I've talked about that. Now that I'm heading the Madawaska Historical Society, the biggest challenge is they've more or less done away in school with Acadian studies. For some reason, it's not considered important. So I have a site, quite a large site with a large cross. I can send you photos of that if you wish.
Yes,
But
please.
yeah, okay. And so it's right along the St. John River, and it's where the first Acadians would have come up in their boats after the deportation and all of that. They came up the St. John River and found that this place in the St. John Valley would have been a good place. It had a lot of lumber, so they didn't have any metal or anything with them. So everything was made with wood, from plows to name it. It was made with wood. So they debarked there. They made friends with the natives that were already here. And I still work very hard to remain on very good terms with the natives. I taught their kids, so there is this huge cross that has been erected. Of course, the Acadians were staunch Catholics. And so when they got off their boats and decided this is where we're going to stay, they erected a very primitive cross, boom, right there. Well, since then, in honor of that, there is a big monument.
Mm.
And on that monument are the names of those Acadians who first landed here. So the greatest challenge for me right now is to try and promote and encourage the knowledge about the heritage, the language, the traditions. So that's why I'm still making high bush cranberry. I'm still making potin pot. I'm still, doing those things.
So you're
So
very
I can send you. I've got a few buildings on the site of the Madawaska Historical Society, but I think for your purposes, if I sent you the photos of the cross monument, and then on there are the plaques. So I've got a close up of the plaque with the names.
yeah. That's great that you're staying so involved in what's happening in the community and trying to continue gaining interest there. So how long have you been working with the Madawaska Society?
The Madawaska Historical Society must be about 5 years now. I didn't pick this up. Somebody else was doing that, but then, that fell through. And so I picked it up, and the part where the cross is, actually, it looks like a park. And then closer to the main road, more inland, is where we have a little museum, and there's the primitive schoolhouse and a typical Acadian home on the site.
So is it just one home?
We just have the one home, yes. And actually, it was hauled there. So it's not in its original spot. It's just that we now own that land, and we put our buildings on there.
Yeah. So is there any plans to expand that?
Yes, I've got plans to build a building. I've got a large collection of agricultural items. So I would love to build. It would not be an old building. It would be a new building, of course, but to house and to display all of these old agricultural artifacts. So someday I'm working on it.
Going to keep you busy for a while, it sounds like.
Oh, guess so, yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me tonight.
Yeah,
And
and
I'll probably be sending you a follow-up email before the end of the week if I can stay on track with everything.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'll just try to keep in touch to let you know what's going on with the bigger part of the research. And like I mentioned, I am going to be interviewing people right now until the end of January. So I probably won't do anything with the actual research until that that's completed. So
In one of your emails, if you'll send me your mailing address,
yeah.
I'm going to send you one of these books.
Oh, sure.
Okay. So, you talk about influence and all that. No, not that I want, but it's a book that was written by my mother,
Oh,
okay, in honor of the Madawaska Centennial back in 1969. Okay. But the why I'm bringing that up to you is inside is a lot of snippets. She didn't make this a research book. Okay.
yeah.
It's a lot of heritage things in like 2 3 paragraphs, and then she changes the subject and goes on. You can get a lot of information about our Acadian history in this area through that book.
That's really awesome. I really appreciate that. This would be an excellent little resource to have.
Well, I think you'll be surprised to find, and she was an artist, so she drew her own little um,
Oh, nice.
yeah, own little things, and then she included photos of things that were happening and all of that. It's a historical thing. She talked about the history, but in 1969.
So obviously history and Acadian culture was very important to your mother as well.
Yes, yeah, she recognized the importance of.
Yeah, that's amazing. I find like I'm trying as a parent, I feel it's important for me to be doing the same thing for my children. So I'm trying to each one of them at their own pace, I guess our own pace, trying to figure out what works best. But I'm teaching them French, and
Yeah,
we're exploring things through music, and my son enjoys reading, so that's been really good. So we're just kind of existing in it and letting it kind of
letting
develop.
it sink in. Yes, letting it sink in. Acadians, at least in this area, are great storytellers. So the same story from the past can be told and retold, but you know what? Nobody complains. So everybody's laughing before the punchline because they know what's coming.
Yeah,
But the same story can be retold, and it's from long ago, and it just, so that's one way of keeping the folklore alive.
yeah. And I really appreciate you taking the time, because adding more perspectives to the narrative inquiry is really, really important for me. And I want to be able to encompass the different uh, perspectives, especially from Maine, where you weren't able to, speak French in the school system for such a long time, and how you guys have been working towards reclaiming the francophone identity there.
That's it. So having gone through what I went through, I grew up and then ended up on the school committee where we put French back in the schools.
So you were
So
part of the committee that made that happen?
yep, full circle. Yeah. So the French came back in the school on a different level than speaking French, but it doesn't matter. It's French in the school.
Yeah.
So
So is it like a French immersion program, or is it, how does it work now?
not quite. This area, the St. John Valley, we do not have a high population. So to say we're going to have grade 3, yeah, English and grade 3 French immersion, there aren't enough kids. So we have to have a hybrid version of that. So they will offer to grade 3 or grade 4 or grade 5, they will offer them part of the day in French. So it's not totally immersion.
Well, that's
So
still a really interesting approach, because it's allowing students to be having the opportunity to speak French for part of the day where they might otherwise
yeah,
not have the
that's it.
ability to do that.
So if you take math, for example, so yes, the little kids are learning 3 + 3 and whatever. But if we at least give them the chance to say 3 + 3 égale 6, well, it's it's another approach, and it gives them a sense of the language.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like I could talk for a really long time about the French and English school systems here in New Brunswick, and I'm sure you'd have a lot of opinions on them as well, working for the francophone school system. I feel that they're really lacking, like that we should have one bilingual system instead of the two that we have. But
Yeah,
it's very frustrating because it's just causing so much bigger issues in New Brunswick, where we have this um, second tier system as well, where I feel like having all of the um, people coming out with European French and then not being able to communicate with the Acadian French speakers, it's causing this huge breakdown of communication. And I saw a lot of this happening when I worked for Horizon Health. I worked in the admin support there for 5 years in bilingual admin support. So I saw people from all over the province working in the St. John Heart Center and sorry, the New Brunswick Heart Center in St. John. So patients from all over, and Maine included sometimes, uh, the different levels of French would be very drastic, just depending
yeah,
on whether they were from northern New Brunswick or whether they were from the Moncton area, for example. It just really was different French. And some of the nursing staff or medical staff coming from schools that were teaching European French had no clue what people were saying. Like when someone says "J'ai mal au cœur,"
yeah.
they're like, "Oh my God, their heart hurts." And it's like, no, that's not what they mean.
No, I
So
know. I know very well, and we went through a period of where it was called the real French. That was European French, the real French, and we were going, okay, are we not real here? Are we some kind? But that is going away, and our French is more and more being recognized as what it is, plain, no explanations to be given, just this is what it is. But I've got a lot of dictionaries and stuff, and we here use a lot of terms that are from the old French. I'm not saying European, I'm saying old. Like here, where I sit, if I'm going to go over the hill, I'm going to call it au large. And that's an old nautical term. So the Acadians had a nautical background, right? Over the ocean, the sea. For them, it meant au large meant out on the ocean. Here, the term has lived, but we're nowhere near the ocean. And au large is up and over the hill, out of sight. We use words like une froc for a jacket. And Quebec people look at us as if to say, huh? A what? Okay. Terms like characteristics like tête de pioche. So when you said mal au cœur there, that came to, well, a stubborn person est une tête de pioche.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are things there that I'm not sure they're in some people have attempted to write, I call them dictionaries with these specific words. And it's fun to read. It's fun to see because we see ourselves in there, and we go, oh, okay.
Yeah. I have a bit of a Acadian dictionary that I started about a decade ago as well, whenever I was listening to different videos on the internet, and I'd be like, oh, I'm not sure if this is something that's Acadian or if it's European French, because in the beginning, I would use a lot of words that I never questioned their origin, right? Until someone else says to you, what are you saying? You never really stop to think about it because it's natural. That's what you say. And, that's just every day. So I started to save some of these little things. But I haven't for a very long time. I need to get back into it. But I did have a little couple of pages written out where I had some examples of sentences and then just like French or Acadian French with the proper French translation or whatever the European equivalent would be, right? And then the English translation, so that depending on who I was teaching in the class, I was able to give translations to.
Yeah. So that's interesting to follow the language type.
Yeah. And it taught me a lot about my own childhood doing that and looking back and thinking about different words that I was using and thinking, okay, I wasn't crazy when I heard someone say that before, and I didn't, 'cause sometimes you hear people say certain things and it it doesn't click, right away.
So there's a lot. There's a lot to it.
Definitely.
But to answer one question from early on when you wrote, Acadians are definitely in the St. John Valley on the US side as well as the Canadian side. We're very much there. There's the whole valley is, you go in a store, you hear the French, you hear the French colloquial, it's very much there. And there is a big interest, especially in the summertime. People do the Acadian festival with the Tintamarre, and the whole works, really, culminating into a parade and whatnot. But it is being recognized, and people are making a big to-do about it.
Yeah.
So it's not to die.
Well, I'm definitely noticing more things, especially on social media about it as well. And it seems sorry, there's a pop-up on my screen here that says that my speaker's not working. Are you able to hear me?
So I can hear you. Yep.
Okay.
I hear you.
All right. So I don't know what's going on with that. But over social media, there's a lot that seems to be up lately.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right, I'll be looking for your email.
Time, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Okay, very good.
Bye. À la prochaine.